Third consecutive night of attacks. President Trump's trying to characterize this latest round, if you will, as a military skirmish. Senators, though, Admiral, are now debating if this has reached forever war status. Can you give me your sense of where are we?
We are closer to forever war than we are to a ceasefire, and I take no joy in saying that. I have felt for a long time, ultimately the two parties here would get to a negotiated conclusion, but certainly the ceasefire is frayed, if not completely off the charts. And Kate, you pointed out the most important thing the administration is doing is this 1,000-mile blockade of the Iranian coast. That's about California, Oregon kind of length, a lot of ports, very expensive to do that. But if anything is going to get the attention of the Iranians, it'll be closing down those red ports that you're showing right there. But final thought here, that takes time. You can't just open and close that gate overnight. So unfortunately, we're probably in for a period of turbulence here.
That's exactly what I was going to ask, which is when they say the blockade on Iranian ports goes into effect at 4 p.m. Eastern, what does that mean for the U.S. Navy? What do people need to understand? As you said, it's not a switch that you flip on and off.
The U.S. Navy will send a couple of destroyers up and around each of the major concentrations of port. And here you've got commanding officers. They're 36, 37, 38 years old. They've got 350 sailors on this destroyer. And their job is to interdict any major ship that attempts to come in and out of that port. It's very risky business, and it can lead to further incidents, further acts of violence going both ways. So think dozens of ships to do this. You've got to put aircraft overhead. You need hundreds of aircraft in order to provide air cover to all of them. Drones possibly coming at them from the air and on the sea. You get the picture, Kate. It's a big operation. It's complicated, and the effects are kind of slow moving, frankly.
Colonel Leighton, we've heard a lot about drones being used in the Iran war, and for the first time, CENTCOM says that the U.S. used a sea drone in combat. Tell us about the significance of that.
Yeah, that's really significant, Pamela. One of the key things here is when you look at the actual explosions that are a part of this, this was a dry dock that the Iranians used, and you can see the sea drone moving forward into the dry dock area. And the dry docks are used for maintenance for ships, and here you can see the color view from the sea drone's perspective that looks like a mini submarine that was in dry dock there. And blowing that up is, of course, a very significant thing. It allows us to get in there using these sea drones without risking personnel. It allows us to get in there, without really putting in danger not only the forces that would have to take over this particular area, but also air crews potentially who could be used in an attack like this. So this is a major achievement from the Navy's perspective, and it kind of mimics what's going on in the Ukraine war. Because the Ukrainians have been able to use sea drones to great effect against the Black Sea Fleet. They've basically eliminated the Russian Black Sea Fleet, and they're now going after commercial vessels in the Black Sea. Here, what we're doing is we're going after those small boats and those submarines that even mini submersibles that the Iranians have, and that, of course, is a very significant thing.
Yeah, it was interesting because I was just overseas on the USS Abraham Lincoln, and the military officials I spoke to said they learned a lot from Russia's war on Ukraine in terms of drone warfare and how much it has changed modern warfare. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so one of the key things here, this is a Saronic. This is one of the U.S. Navy's above surface drones, and it was actually used in the rescue operation for the Apache helicopter crew that was forced to ditch their aircraft in the Persian Gulf. So it's used for search and rescue missions. They did that for the first time. It's also, of course, used as an attack platform. And because it is part of that, it really is, an evolution from what we had before. When you look at how we started out with things, we started out with the Predator back in the late 90s, early 2000s. That became, first in the intelligence community, was part of the mix that they had. But then it was used by the Air Force, not only for reconnaissance purposes, but also, for example, using Hellfire missiles and Tomahawk missiles to go after the various elements that would be potentially providing danger to U.S. forces, and also as an offensive weapon that it can be used to go after those areas that would be there. And then, of course, we also had the Global Hawk. This was a high-altitude platform. The Predator was a lower altitude platform. This has a huge range of 12,300 nautical miles, can stay up for 34 hours, and it is a good launch platform and also a great reconnaissance platform as well. So that's how we started. But then when you go back to some of the things that we can do nowadays, the Saronic is an example of that, of vessels that are not only surface vessels, but then we also have, of course, much smaller drones that are in the air as well.
So the U.S. is using drones, obviously, but also Iran is, and it's really been trying to use that to its advantage because they're significantly cheaper, and sometimes the U.S. has to use these more expensive weapons to take down the threat. Tell us about that.
That is so true. For example, the Iran Shahed 136. So it's a relatively small aircraft when you look at it, but it's still noticeable. It's 8.2 feet with its wingspan, has a range of about 1,200 miles, costs only $20,000. So that's an important number to keep in mind here. And when you see the Shahed take off, it is an aircraft that can be seen in a way that you don't normally expect aircraft to fly, but it is a fairly effective weapon. Now, when you look at the Shahed 136, we mentioned the $20,000 cost. A standard missile or a Patriot interceptor, they cost between $3 and $4 million apiece. So that's the difference. Now, having said this, there are U.S. weapon systems that are being used that cost much less than this. For example, there's a weapon system that's being used on actual missiles that are rockets that are fired by aircraft that costs only $40,000. Not quite the $20,000 that we have with the Shahed, but much cheaper than $3 or $4 million.
It's definitely an evolution in warfare, right? To see lower cost drones that are able to impose costs on expensive weapons systems. We are able to push our defenses pretty far out and use our lower cost weapon systems. I would say that we continue to want to evolve into even more low cost weapon systems to take down some of these drones because the cost exchange ratio is still something that we watch really closely.
Was that something that surprised you early on, that how the Iranians were using these drones in warfare to try to deplete our armaments and cause us to lose those expensive weapons?
Yeah, I think it's something that we had thought through after watching Ukraine's experience in their war, and recognizing how fast the technology of drones are evolving and how that does potentially impact our ability to shoot them down with weapons that are more expensive than the drones themselves.
The thing that really stresses the system the most is that massed attack.
Yeah.
Right? The massed attack, because there's only so many weapons we can put out at any one time. So we're trying all the time to counter that. Now again, if we detect it early enough, then you have a lot of time to do it. So I'm always looking. Hey, my fight really starts at that Iranian coastline and comes all the way back. I don't wait for it to come to me. I go out and I try to meet that
Go
threat.
out to try to meet that. Yeah, and there's also just thinking about what weapons you're going to use. For example, a cheap drone.
Yes.
Do you use a multi-million-dollar missile to take it down?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of calculation, I imagine.
So it's definitely the case of missile conservation is one of my biggest things, and I really don't want to use our really super high-end missiles for threats that don't require it. And sometimes that means we have to wait a little bit, right? Sometimes it means, hey, you know what? I could shoot right now with a destroyer's missile, but if I wait 5 minutes, I could have the aircraft from the Abe up with their somewhat less expensive missile, still expensive, but not as expensive as one from the ship, and I can engage with that, or maybe even go in for a gun kill kind of thing. And so if we wait, if we're doing that tactical patience, that helps out a lot with missile conservation. But when we first came out, that was a learning curve, because when we first the first few days, you're like, oh, we got to go take care of it right now, because that's your human reaction kind of thing.
And you still don't know what their capabilities are in those
Correct.
early days.
Yeah,
we're learn.
Exactly. Like you don't really know. But now that we've kind of been here for a while, we've gotten used to what we're seeing. We know their pattern of life. We're always on the tip of our toes.
And as we just listened to that conversation, Sabrina, and the